If you walk the modern Camino Francés, about 109 kilometers before you reach Santiago, you will pass through a lush green stretch of Galician forest and arrive at the Church of Santiago de Barbadelo. Today, it looks like the definition of a sleepy, isolated rural stop. It's a quiet parish church sitting quietly in the countryside. But that quiet exterior is entirely deceptive. 1,000 years ago, this precise spot was the epicenter of a sprawling, powerful monastic empire. The simple stone facade we look at today is actually an architectural illusion. It is the last remaining shell of a massive institution that generated immense wealth, projected regional power, and eventually collapsed. We know how much gravity this place used to hold because of a 12th century manuscript called the Codex Calixtinus. It's essentially the very first guidebook ever written for the Camino de Santiago. This specific page of the Codex contains a highly particular warning for travelers. It documents how con artists based in Santiago would travel all the way out to Barbadelo specifically to intercept and hustle arriving pilgrims. Santiago is over 100 kilometers away. For medieval grifters to justify making a trek of that distance on foot, Barbadelo had to be a highly lucrative, densely populated bottleneck for international foot traffic. How does a bustling, powerful hub, capable of attracting international organized crime, shrink into a single, isolated parish church? To understand the reality of the modern Camino, we have to reverse engineer the rise and fall of the institutions that built and controlled Barbadelo. In the 800s, Barbadelo existed as a decentralized complex called Casa Domni Adilani, a network of independent family monasteries scattered across the region. Then, in 1009, a regional superpower enters the picture, the nearby abbey of Samos. As you can see, this was a massive, fortified monastic operation. Samos executed an institutional takeover.
It absorbed the entire Barbadelo network, completely stripping the smaller sites of their independence. Barbadelo was downgraded to a dependent priory. Samos monks moved in to administer the territory from a nearby administrative building, a structure that locals still call O Priorato today. With that signature, Barbadelo transitioned from a sovereign empire into a vassal state managed by the Abbey of Samos. Losing its independence, however, came with a serious financial upside. The deep pockets of Samos funded Barbadelo's architectural golden age in the late 12th century, resulting in the heavy, robust Romanesque church we see here. They built a rare three-body Romanesque tower with a highly specific function, to serve as a towering visual beacon for pilgrims approaching through the dense forest. These enigmatic carvings of lions, serpents, and stars functioned as medieval billboard advertising, designed to broadcast specific theological messages and awe weary travelers. Look closely at this highly eroded capital on the right side of the portal. It features a rare depiction of the flagellation of Christ. This level of complex, esoteric imagery was entirely wasted on local peasants. It was carved to communicate with a highly sophisticated international pilgrim audience passing through the bottleneck. The Romanesque structure standing today is essentially the petrified wealth of the Samos Abbey, deliberately dropped in the middle of a forest to project power. By the 18th century, the needs of the route had shifted. The original apse of the church was destroyed to make room for a small pilgrim hospital, known as a hospitalillo, complete with a French fireplace. But the fatal blow to the site's power arrived in 1835, with the desamortización, a massive nationwide political maneuver where the Spanish state confiscated church lands. Look at how the map fractures. The state formally stripped the monastery of its power and sold the adjacent monastic buildings off to private farmers. That single political act officially ended the monastic era. The grand priory that once commanded the attention of international scammers was permanently reduced to a simple rural parish. For over a century following the confiscation, Barbadelo slipped into deep obscurity, largely forgotten by the outside world. That quiet held until 1993, when the modern Camino Francés experienced a sudden, massive global resurgence in popularity. To handle the influx, an abandoned rural school near the church was transformed into a public albergue. Almost overnight, an incredible average of 3,000 global pilgrims a year were walking right back through Barbadelo. A medieval pilgrim sought a bed and a fire in the 18th century albarcillo. Today, a modern hiker seeks a bunk in the 20th century albergue. A millennium later, the core function of the site remains completely identical. Barbadelo has survived a brutal evolution. It was an independent empire, then a vassal of Samos, then a privately owned farm, and finally a national monument on a global hiking route. Empires consolidate and institutions eventually collapse, but these physical stones and the drive to walk between them outlast the organizations that built them.